Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Future Forward session in its third edition. My name is Sarah Bergh, and I am saying hello tonight, this evening, to forward-thinking professional Raphaël de Courville and student responder and outsider I, Annalena Scherfose. So we'll be ending this day talking a bit more about museum and entertainment. And I guess it's a little strange, let me say, that entertainment has been put in focus. As we all know that easiness, relaxation of the mind, and yes, to cut it short, laughter, are just human and therefore self-evident and natural. Smiling eyes, for example, are recognized everywhere. And all of us who've been traveling in far places where we maybe could not speak the language, there we probably used our smiles and friendly eye expression to get in touch, didn't we? So we are discussing all too human needs, is it? So, Raphaël de Courville, you are a designer whose work merges interaction design, digital art, and new technologies. You're also active as an educator and media artist. Since 2012, you have been co-organizing Creative Code Berlin, a community that promotes dialogue between art and technology. And you are co-founder of Neu, a Berlin-based design studio focused on beneficial and playful uses of emerging technologies, including virtual and augmented reality. So, Raphael, maybe could you say at the beginning, or to start with, to which of today's sayings or keywords you could relate the easiest way? Was it like Robin telling us, communicate and enjoy, and education and perhaps reaction will follow? Or was it Tim who mentioned or pointed out we are in the experience economy, so our work should also be, and we just heard it in the last deep dive, our work should be emotional, memorable, TikTokable, and also be to be put and understand on Instagram? Or was it maybe Marie-Cécile who said, and I think it was beautifully put, we were asking our visitors, what noise can you find in a Basquiat drawing? Could you tell how much can you relate to each of those sayings?
Well, that's a lot.
Or what else?
I would say all of it, but I was listening to the talks, and I perceived that there's a common thread in all of them, which was a certain ambivalence to the notion of entertainment. Sometimes a defiance to the common assumption, and saying like, yes, we should be also in the experience economy. Yes, we should also. What the museum doesn't have to be boring, there's a common fear or ambiguity in the relationship between museums and entertainment that, as a designer, I get to perceive or feel, or sometimes really gets expressed by the kind of people we work with very, very clearly. And that's what I was talking about just earlier. I think it's really interesting as a designer to work in this very in the middle of this tension, and to try to pick apart the hopes that sometimes exaggerated hopes put in the ability of entertainment to accomplish the kind of goals that you have for your museum. Like Mr. Peely was talking about how now you really want to augment the number of visitors as your main key performance indicator, which is also a word or a term that's borrowed from a very business environment. And this sort of desire to emulate businesses, but at the same time a fear to become like one or become like a theme park. And that's a really to me that's the very interesting core of this issue, is how do you bring back all of these hopes and all of these fears into something that actually is realistic and that addresses the needs of the visitors? Because ultimately that's what you want to do. Even if your main performance indicator is the number of visitors, it correlates quite strongly to how positively the visitors experience your museum, and that should be your target, really. But that's a bit harder to measure, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So greetings to you, Anneliese Scherfose, as well. Hi there, beautiful that you're with us. Anneliese is a project manager, writer and curator living and working in Berlin and Frankfurt. She's currently finishing her MA in curatorial studies in Städelschule and Goethe University in Frankfurt. And she's part of the selection committee and curatorial team for the exhibition monitoring as part of the Kassel Documentary Film and Video Festival since 2019. Since 2017 already, she is program manager of the artist mentoring program BPA Berlin Program for Artists. So hello to you, Anneliese.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
I mean, the talks have been circling around technologies and techniques. So maybe, and Raphaël already mentioned it, why do you think that there's such a fear, or why do we lose curiosity once techniques get in?
Yeah, what was interesting to me is the example we talked, or the examples that have been mentioned in the sprints, oftentimes, which were considered to be entertainment, were actually often a tool for education used at the museum. And only because it was technology that was in place here, there was this fear of it being entertainment and taking away from the educational aspect of the museum that was there originally. And I think the reason might be that this technology is considered to be from the entertainment sector. And even though it is used for educational purposes, there is still, this implication to it. But I guess that is really just the medium, and the main question is what's transported with it, and not the canvas that's used to draw onto. So I think it really is because it is from that sphere of entertainment industry, or it could be.
So maybe right away from your disciplines, could you just take us to a museum or an inspiring gallery of your choice and enter it, visit with us, if you just imagine, you enter a space, you get into the foyer, there is the admission staff. What do you see from your discipline? What are aspects and fields of your research? Could you just tell us a little bit and take us to that journey? How do you enter and see and feel and experience museum buildings or gallery rooms?
If I think of a really utopic museum, and following the current discourse of a museum being a democratic place, a space, a polyphonic space, it would be, I can't describe it in detail, but I will try to keep it very broad. It would be something that it starts with really the architecture, being something accessible. And I think the moment where P. Lee was criticizing exhibitions happening in shopping malls, that I have also seen a few in Shanghai, I would actually say, of course, it depends on the exhibition, but in general, if you think of the accessibility of such a place compared to museums that have ginormous entrances where you have to climb quite a lot of stairs to get in, open ginormous doors, that would be yeah, that would be a place where that accessibility is easier. And to go back to my idea of a museum, it really is about creating a space for interaction, making it possible. That was also an aspect Manu Scher talked about, making something personalized, something you can personally relate to, that makes it possible to connect it to your own story in a way. But I think Raphael can probably also add to that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned the architecture. Yeah, we've been working with several museums that have very intense architectural identities. We worked with the Futurium and with the Kulturforum, that both have this very strong, in one case, like almost original brutalist architecture. In the other one, I don't know if I'm not an architect, I don't know if it qualifies as neo-brutalist, but it has this very strong black marble, very beautiful, but also quite intimidating quality to it. And we were working on an installation that was mainly targeted at kids or younger audiences, let's say. And we did a workshop with kids in this space before anything was installed there, really. And so it was this big, empty, temple-like space with gigantic, like really high ceilings and black walls. And the kids were getting very quiet and very silent and very shy. And how can you, with your work as a designer, creating an installation, counteract this? Or ideally you want to play with the architecture, but it was quite challenging. And so we had to come up with something extremely colorful and very bold to change the perception of the space. And that's another form of augmentation as well. Ideally, you'd be involved early on in the process so that you work with the architecture and in collaboration with it. But very often we don't have this luxury, and we come in at a time when there is an existing architecture, either because it's historical or because it's just there, and you came in a bit too late to have any say in the way that the exhibition is designed, especially when it comes to augmented reality, which often is conceived as a way to counteract some failings of the existing exhibition design that cannot be changed. From some people, at least that's part of the conversations that we often have. And I thought that something that Robin Reardon was saying was really interesting in the way that, you know, they do space making or place making as part of the storytelling. And that sounds amazing, but very often in a museum we don't have this luxury, and we can rely on characters, we can rely on storytelling, sound, visuals, and words, but we cannot change the space. And that might be a crucial difference with a theme park. So yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from the entertainment industry, for sure, if we can try not to be afraid of it, of the word itself. And sometimes we try to bring it through the back door, through some examples and discussions with the curators, to show them the aspects of it that might be interesting for their purpose. But we have to be very careful about it, because it's a hot topic. It's a big red button that's always in the middle of the room.
I mean, we talk so much about the bringing in the audience and talking about those who organize the space. But how about your experience with artists, Annalisa? To what extent do they agree to be presented in an entertaining way? What would you say?
I think that really depends a lot on the practice. There are some artists who already implement augmented reality and aspects of gamification in their work. And in that context, I think it's interesting because it is never a question whether this work is serious or whether that tech is taking away from the seriousness of it. What really makes the difference is if you add that element to a work that is also from another century, and you add that onto it. And I think this is exactly where this fear kicks in, because that usually wasn't an element used to transport knowledge. And once you change that, you are not the one writing the wall text anymore, as to speak. It is the person designing the augmented reality experience. And of course, that is threatening for a museum person.
That's a reason why we tend to work very closely with the curators, and there's a lot of fact checking happening. It's always part of the planning that we have. Anytime we touch content, we need to have a week or two actually to make sure that there's time for the curators to have a look and check that it's either scientifically accurate or just that it respects their vision. And one thing that I want to say about this fear of replacing the direct experience of the artwork, which is present, especially when we talk about augmented reality, because you have a literal screen between you and the artwork sometimes. I always like to say that the ideal experience is that you have sort of this gesture, like you look at the screen, then you look at the artwork, then you look at the screen, then you look at the artwork again. And that's where you see something you didn't see in the first place. And we had this in several cases with the artworks in the Gemäldegalerie, because that's there can be an augmentation that reveals something that you didn't see the first time you looked at the painting, and now you see it, like something was painted over, or there is this just faintly perceptible change in the painting that you could see through the X-ray image that we overlay on the painting. And now you see, oh, this painting by Hans Holbein the Younger had a different kind of way to face, or the shells were oriented slightly differently, and why did the painter change this? And you can sort of still see it, but you would have never seen it if you didn't have the augmentation to sort of hint at it. And that's really something that I saw actually from a younger visitor at the Gemäldegalerie when we did the test with visitors, and really showed me that this worked, was that they did the experience, this kid, and so that, oh yeah, there were characters originally in that painting of a city, and they were painted over because either they were not original to the painting, or maybe the tastes changed at some point. We don't really know. The curators, art historians don't exactly know why these characters were there, and they're not. And so the kid saw that and was fascinated by it, could now see it in the painting, and ran to fetch their sister and said, like, look, I've seen this, and pointed not at the screen, but they pointed at the painting to show them, oh, look, there were characters here and here and here. And to me, that's the metric. It's like, how can you create a new way to look at the paintings that might be closer to the way that the curators themselves look at the painting, because the curators are not always available to give you this walkthrough, but the technology might be, and it shouldn't be at the center of the experience, but it's an enabler that brings you a little bit closer to the experience you might have being guided by a very knowledgeable and very interesting person through the museum.
I find it really interesting because you mentioned that many interactions with the people using the augmented reality you developed. And I think, and you also mentioned earlier that prototyping and testing is essential for your work. And compared to other methods of education, let's call them the classical methods, I feel this is something that is not used that often, that you really in-depth watch visitors, how they interact, for example, with the wall text, that you have feedback loops with them and see how they react to the different options they have available. And I think that is really something that makes that experience so special, that that there is this kind of, let's call it, control mechanism that checks how visitors react to it and whether this really works in the way it's intended.
Yeah, you can do these studies in a qualitative, quantitative way. We haven't done so much quantitative research, though a little bit, but we typically try to have a feedback form when we do an installation. We did that at the Naturkundemuseum, in the Bird Gallery. And yeah, we really like to do this because it's a great way to see what works and what doesn't. And yeah, a lot of feedback that says, "Oh, it would be great for kids," but yeah, people enjoy it, and that's why we try to do it. But yeah, you get surprised by the kind of feedback you get, and that's when you know that something might be interesting to change. Like, for example, sometimes you try things that don't work. We tried wayfinding through sound, and that was an accessibility issue, actually. It sounded great for us. You could pinpoint a sound in a certain area using binaural audio or spatial audio. Great tech, amazing, immersive, but some people just don't hear very well from one ear, and that breaks the thing completely. And in the group that we had testing the app within the museum, I think like half of the people had hearing loss and just couldn't use the wayfinding. So we just added a map again, and that's just something you can find through testing. No matter how excited you are about a feature, if it doesn't work with real visitors, then you have to lose it.
Do you, I mean, by mentioning kids and youngsters, do you actually draw a line between developing tools and materials for youngsters and adults? Or is it what is working for kids is basically good for anyone?
I really think it is. I really wish it was more the case, but we had this experience with the Futurium installation, which unfortunately I wasn't physically present to see, but was told to me by some friends who work there, that they had an early showing of the lab to some diplomats, I think a group of French diplomats, and the serious kind with a suit. And apparently, walking around, like, oh, interesting, very nice. And then they got to our installation with this big, bold, colorful funnels that you really invite you to shout and, bend over and shout in this funnel. And then some interesting things happen on the wall. And yeah, apparently these very serious diplomats were just getting really excited and shouting and not paying attention at all to their public image at that point. And that was really nice to hear, because that means, it's not just for kids. Maybe they wouldn't admit it publicly that they enjoyed it, but they did. And I think if good interaction is good interaction, no matter for whom. And we're all still kids inside, hopefully. So if you design it for the kid and everybody, then you're probably going in a good direction design-wise.
So what would you say in 3 or 5 keywords, how to bring more entertainment and playfulness to our museums? What would your golden 3 advice would be?
Wow. So yeah, playfulness in the museum. Well, as we said before, listen to the visitors, listen to the curators, and only use just as much technology as is really necessary to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. Whether it's the curators wanting to communicate a certain type of information, or the visitors having certain desires or expectations vis-a-vis the museum. This is a balance to find. I think there's a lot of hopes put in technology, maybe some in playfulness or entertainment. Very often we hear, oh, it has to be playful, but not too playful. It has to be fun, but it shouldn't be a game. And so we walk on eggshells very often, but we also try to be provocative. So yeah, trying to shake people a little bit out of their comfort zone can be useful, but not be too confrontational. And yeah, try to inject playfulness in the process, I would say, is very important. That's something that we tend to try to do, like having a ceremony in the middle of the forest with some curators from the state museums was a memorable moment, I would say, as part of the process. So we did that. And yeah, you have to be playful yourself. You can't just, be very seriously talking about being playful. You have to embody this in your method, in your design approach. And that's what we always try to do. It's hard to be perceived seriously all the time when you do that, but it's important to try at every step. Yes.
Annalena?
Yeah, I would say the entertainment is already there. It really just needs a few tools to enhance it, to unleash it. And I think the most important part of that is really to change the perception of the institution itself. And then it just happens naturally. And yeah, men in suits start screaming around.
So beautiful. Thanks. My big thank you to the two of you. So keep challenging our imagination, please. And yes, to the audience out there, have a cheerful rest of the evening. And I hope that you stay tuned, and we'll be seeing tomorrow again. So all the best. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Ciao.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.